When you work in this field of women's rights, human rights, there's a lot of talking. We all like to talk, we have many nice things to say, but very few people actually do anything that really affects their society and really improves the lives of their families, their sisters, their brothers, the people that they actually care about. And that's why Gender Alliance is so extraordinary, and this initiative also is so extraordinary. I actually started my work, I'm trained in law, so I'm a lawyer, and I started my work in domestic violence. And my first cases, they were always these cases where the level of control that a woman was giving up when she would enter into a marriage ended up being the factor that affected her abuse later down the line. I was working with one woman who was struggling to find a home for herself and her small son, because in the time that she had been married to her abusive husband, he had actually taken the title of the house and put it in his name. He took their bank accounts and he changed the name on the bank account to his name. He told her, "Stop working, I don't want you to work. I'll provide for you, I'm the husband, I can do this." And she didn't think any of these things were bad at the time, because we had a tendency to see these behaviors as normal, almost romantic, that a man wants to take care of you. But at the end of the day, 5 years later, when she was suffering a great amount of abuse in her life, it became clear that all of this was a method of control, not just emotional, psychological control, but financial control. And because of that financial control, she wasn't able to speak up. She wasn't able to come forward because she said, okay, maybe I can make a report to the police, but what if he throws me out of my house? Where will I go? Where will I take my son? And it took her that long to come to us to ask for help. And we ended up fighting that case. We got her her house, and she still lives there now with her son. But there are so many issues like this that women are facing that are structural issues. They're not just a problem of a woman being strong enough or brave enough or smart enough to come forward and get help when she needs it. It's also a matter of having people standing there ready to receive her and ready to give her that help, but also willing to fight for those structural changes that we so badly need in order to change the system and make sure that when women speak up, there's real action that's going to happen to help them out of their situations. Now, as you heard, I currently work for the Code Blue campaign. We work on accountability for United Nations personnel that come into countries like India. They commit sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and then they're held to a standard where they're above the law, because these people come here with immunity. And one of the things that we've been fighting for 3 years now is figuring out how can you hold these abusers accountable. And it's been a struggle, because we're talking about some of the most powerful people in the world, connected to one of the most powerful institutions in the world. And I think this is one thing also that really has impressed me about Prashanti and the work that she's been doing, and as well as the work of many people here that have been involved in this case. It takes a lot of courage to stand against something that big, that overpowering, and to say, I have rights, I still want what is due to me. Not anything special, not anything extraordinary, just rights. And when we see these cases in the UN, one of the things that comes out over and over is that it's the same dynamic actually that I used to see in the domestic violence cases. It's the same dynamic that we see in all other sexual abuse, sexual harassment cases, all of these ways in which we disempower women, because we build a framework that asks them to just bear it. Just please bear it. Because you don't know what effect this could have on the reputation of the man that you're accusing. You don't know the effect of the reputation on the institution. And all of these other questions, these reputation questions, not making a big deal out of something, that becomes the status quo. And so when a woman raises her voice, she's seen as a troublemaker. And this is the thing that we have to change now. We have to ask, how did we allow ourselves to build a system that only ensures harmony if women bear the full cost of that harmony. If women take into themselves all that abuse, all that harassment, and don't ever speak up externally and don't challenge that system. I think the next step here is that when we have these kinds of initiatives, first we have to support from the very beginning that girls are not raised to be silent, that they should just take whatever abuse is given to them. They need to be empowered to speak up. But then we have to recognize that if Chupitod exists, if people are able to raise their voice and come forward, we as society have to be there to receive them. And not only in one instance, not only with one problem that they present, but to look really deeply at these larger institutional problems. As that girl who comes forward and escapes a child marriage, escapes an abusive situation, grows up, how are we opening doors for her? Not just to personally empower her, but how will we give her the power to change her society? And part of the process of giving power means that we have to give our own power. We have to stand aside and say, I will not take the space to speak on her behalf, but I will move and I will let her speak for herself. And this is the same thing that's happening everywhere in the world, in every country. It's a struggle of us finding a way to empower people by reducing our own power and letting them take charge of their own lives and shape the world into what they need it to be. Even in the United Nations, one of the problems that always comes up is the diplomatic relation. Some countries are powerful, some countries are less powerful. Forever, since the history of the founding of the United Nations, since 1947, when these conventions were all written, when these international missions started,